Hi, this is Rosie Flores, and you are listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio. That's 97.7 FM.
Okay. We will start with some childhood memories, though. If we were to stop by your family home when you were a young girl growing up, what would we have heard? A lot of music going on?
Well, there was a lot of music on American Bandstand on the television, and there was a lot of music going on. We had a radio in the kitchen on top of the refrigerator, and that was on all the time. If the radio wasn't on, then the television was on, and my parents were big music fans, so it was all about music in our house. And when I was about 7 years old, my father went out and bought a 2-track tape recorder, and he was a real big fan of, all the hit parade songs, and he loved to sing, even though he was never a singer per se, professional singer. And we would get these magazines. He would bring them home, and they were called the Hit Parade. And hey, did you get that? Did you get those little bottles? Okay, thank you, sweetie. Oh, I forgot that. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
But I'm just leaving. I've been hanging out at a health spa with my friends in Switzerland all day, so it caught me at a good, relaxed time.
Oh, good.
But anyway, Dad used to record me and my brother, and we would get these Hit Parade magazines that had all the lyrics, and we were so familiar with all the melodies because we listened to the radio all the time, and he would record us, and so I have recordings from 7 years old on up to 14 and 15 and on, but actually, if you're familiar with a CD I released called Rockabilly Philly, the very last bonus track is a recording from when I was 7 years old. It's just a little bit of a little jazz song that I'm singing, which I've come full circle because now I have a jazz band in town, too. So things just always come around, I guess. But, yeah, there was a lot of music around me when I was a kid.
It sounds like your dad was very supportive of you pursuing musical ambitions.
Extremely, yeah. He supported it because he was a big fan of music himself, and he really delighted in our muse and our attraction and passion for music. He was delighted that we could sing and sing on pitch, and that we just took to music and picking up the guitars when we were kids. And when I was 16, I started my first all-girl band in high school. I started playing blues and, a little bit of country rock and just whatever was popular at the time. And he went out and took our band to the store and signed for all of our gear, amplifiers, drums, guitars, and we just basically had the equipment to carry on and start doing it for a living. And we started getting little gigs, and all of a sudden I just became a lifer, and I just never stopped doing that from, that happened in 1966.
That was Penelope's Children, that band.
That's right.
Yeah. Was it hard getting acceptance at being an all-girl band back in those days? It would have been a rarity.
It was so rare. I mean, it was so rare that I thought we were the very first all-girl rock and roll band ever. And I didn't know that there was one in New York called, I'm trying to remember their name, Ginger and the Cookies or something.
Goldie and the Gingerbread.
I know Ginger was in the name.
Yeah, Genya Ravan.
Gingerbread.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was Fanny, which was happening in Los Angeles, who later got a major recording contract, and then another band in Los Angeles, and this was around it would have been like around 1971. There was a band called Bertha, and the woman that played bass in that band went on to become one of Jackson Browne's main background vocalist is an amazing singer, blue-eyed soul, Rosemary Butler. And she became like a really big studio session musician. And I just remember her playing bass and singing in this band, and she just blew me away. And I'm like, I want to sing like her, And I was more like trying to sing like, Grace Slick and Janis Joplin or whatever. But anyway, that, trying to make it as an all-girl band out of San Diego didn't carry through for us because we weren't around the industry. I felt like if I would have grown out of LA, I probably would have been, friends with those girls and met the right people or whatever. But we were just in little small town, San Diego, Surferville, and we got it pretty popular in town. We were younger than those other girls, and we just got popular in San Diego. We did a lot of what back then. Have you ever heard of the Battle of the Bands? It was very popular in the '60s, and we would always win like first, second, or third place because we were not only could we play and we sounded great, but we were unique. So people, that gave us an edge, And so we became kind of popular, and we would play the school shows, and we played at the Marine base and what do you call it? The little night, afternoon and early evening spots, the recreation centers as they were called, for teenagers, and we played the rec centers and we'd get hired to play, and so we got a lot of chance to play for people, and we got we gained a following, and we were able to hone our craft as musicians. And then, when we turned 21, when we were 18, we got in a van, a little Volkswagen van, and we took our first tour to San Antonio, Texas, which is where I was born. And we stayed with one of my aunts, and we got a gig in a local underage rock and roll club. And we thought we were big time. We thought we were going to go places, and we could have if we had stuck together. There was a guy his name was Michael something, and he wanted to manage me and the band, and he wanted us to move to Austin, Texas. And the other two girls are like, oh, it's too hot in Texas, and we don't want to live here, and we want to go to college. And I'm like, you're kidding, this is a chance of a lifetime. And, I was always the ambitious one, which is why I'm still in music, and they're not, But, I ended up making it to a certain degree and have a career and had a good time, and still having a good time, still recording, still touring and all that. So it's been a good life, a good musical life for me, and I don't have any regrets about it at all.
And there was another early band of yours, the Screaming Sirens. Can you tell us about them?
Yep, that was a band that I met when I was living in LA. I had, done pretty well with my own band in San Diego, which was called Rosie and the Screamers. And so when I moved up to LA, I had to basically start from the bottom and try to build up a name in LA. And it was taking me a long time, and I was getting very discouraged with it. And I wanted to just kind of take a break from it. So I took a break and started cooking at this vegetarian restaurant called I Love Juicy. And we made fresh juices and vegan sandwiches, and it was on Melrose, and it was a really cool little place. But I really began to miss music. And I was also doing housekeeping for a guy that managed Merle Haggard and the rock band called X. And so I was kind of around the music business. I would still go and see shows, but I ended up looking at the wanted ads in the LA Weekly magazine, and I found an ad for the Screaming Sirens, and that they were looking for a bass player. And at the time, I was still doing some solo acoustic shows, opening for David Lindley, the guy that played slide guitar for Jackson Browne. He had a hit record on an album that he put out, which featured the single Mercury Blues. You want to buy me a Mercury and cruise it up and down the road, which was later covered by Alan Jackson on country radio. So it's a popular song. But anyway, I answered this ad, and I had a pink 6-string bass that David Lindley had loaned me. And I'm like, I have a bass. I'll go audition for them. I can play 6-string and bass in this all-girl, punk rock band. That would be fun. I wouldn't have to be the leader. And it would just be like a fun thing to do. And I went to the audition, and I fell in love. And we fell in love with each other. We were just like, we bonded. We were like, yeah, you're in the band. And all of a sudden, they became my best friends, and I stayed with them for, 5 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Until I got signed to, Warner Brothers and started a country career from then. But I had, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough. But I had so much fun touring with that. And because we got to play a lot of rock and roll bars and, play with a lot of, up-and-coming punk rock bands and, bands like, the Red Hot Chili Peppers and, the Smithereens and X and the Blasters. And we were part of the L.A. Punk rock, rockabilly scene. So it was just tons of fun. And, it's a good thing I got out of them because it was maybe we rocked a little too hard sometimes. But, I was fortunate enough to have met the bass player from Tom Petty's band, who's since passed away. It's the wonderful musician who played bass with the Heartbreakers, a guy named Howie Epstein. And he was good friends with Emmylou Harris's steel guitar player, Steve Fishel. And they did some demos on me, and I ended up getting a record deal out of Nashville with Warner Brothers Reprise, and it was the same label and the same person that not hired, but signed Dwight Yoakam. So Dwight and I at the time were kind of the he and she of the new. They called it the New Traditionalists at the time, and that the New Traditionalists was an actual real name for what they were calling me and Katie Lang and Lyle Lovett and Katie Oslin and of course Dwight Yoakam and just all these kind of new neo-traditionalist kind of thing. And we were all getting airplay and we were all the ones that were trying to bring country music back to more of a rootsy traditional sound and like pull it away from where people like Reba McEntire were taking it, and where eventually, a lot of the artists ended up making it country sound more like, arena rock or something, and it just, less steel guitars and less fiddles and more electric guitars and more digital type recording, and we were still trying to be analog and trying to pick up from where George Jones and Johnny Cash, who had just gotten dropped from Capitol Records by Jimmy Bowen, and it was like, wait a minute, those are the real guys. These other guys aren't the real thing, So we tried to be the younger generation that was trying to keep that alive, and it was an exciting time, and I was really excited that the demos that I did with Howie ended up getting me signed, and and it only lasted a few years. I didn't really have the management and the money behind me to get the push and the marketing that I needed. And Nashville was a little tough on me. I was maybe a little too rock for country or maybe too Hispanic, who knows. But at the same time, I did really well in Europe, and I got a lot of airplay, and it was a lot of reviews, really great reviews everywhere, and so I did okay for myself, enough to put me on the map and get me established, and I could tour Europe 5 times a year, and I had a lot of fans, a lot of good fan base, and so I kind of carried on from the bit of notoriety and good press that I had from that first record that Pete Anderson produced for me, and I just kind of kept going and self-produced myself, and I ended up going to, first of all, to a Swiss label called Red Moon Records out of Switzerland and toured there, and then I ended up going to High Tone Records, which was out of Oakland, California, and they bought up that record, and I recorded a bunch of albums for them, and then I went to Rounder Records, and then I went to Eminence, and then I went, where did I go after Eminent? I guess I started my own label, Durango Rose Records, and then I went to Bloodshot Records, and that's where I remain now.
That's where you are.
That's my career in a nutshell.
It sure is. I've seen a lot of people label you as essentially a rockabilly artist, which I've always felt is pretty unfair. I think there's a lot more diversity to your music than just rockabilly. Is that a source of frustration to you at times?
Mm-hmm. It is, because I've started out, when I was a little girl singing jazz, and then I went with the sign of the times, and I started playing surf guitar, and then I loved the British sound, or before that, the Motown sound, and the sounds out of Detroit, and tried to sing like the girl groups. That was when I first started singing, with my brother's band, singing songs like Heat Wave, and what was that, Martha and the Vandellas, and no, I don't think that was, I can't remember the name of the artist that originally did Heat Wave. Was it Martha and the Vandellas?
It was Martha and the Vandellas, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it was.
Yep.
And the Supremes, and I put together an all-girl group that was like following the Supremes with the big hairdos, and and from that I started picking up the guitar, and then that's when, after the Beatles came, and I became enamored with playing everything from the Beatles to the Jefferson Starship and the Rolling Stones and Jimi Hendrix, and I started finding my footing as a lead guitar player, and that's where I just kind of took off from the blues and the rock and country rock, and just kind of kept going, and at one point, when I was the punk rocker using a heavy metal pedal, which was after I was doing country rock for many years, and then I switched over to the Hollywood scene. From that, it became really popular to be country, like, because Dwight Yoakam was hot on the scene, and I was like, oh, I can do that. You like that? I got that. I'm that trick pony too. So I got a lot of tricks up my sleeve, and so I put that band together, and that's what got me signed to Warner Brothers. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do this for a while. This is fun, But when Nashville wouldn't accept me for the songs I was doing and these wonderful records I was making, then I kind of went, okay, I'm going to turn my back on Tennessee and come back to L.A., and I put out a record called After the Farm, and it was more city rock, and I did a really great record with Greg Lease producing, and with him and Dwayne Jarvis on guitars and me on guitars and Donna Lindley, and that's when I started that Red Moon record, sound, and moved into the high tone thing, and it was kind of after that I started discovering Janis Martin and Wanda Jackson, and I just sort of thought, I'm going to go back and do some more rockabilly, because there was a great rockabilly scene, and it was really fun and popular, and I thought, I could get some work doing this, and I love all these songs, and I started writing, and it was real easy for me to play that rockabilly style on the guitar, and there was no women doing it at the time. And I put a record out called Rockabilly Philly, and I called Wanda Jackson and I called Janice Martin. I said, hey, you guys haven't recorded for a while. Want to do a duet with me on my record? And they were like, yeah. And they hadn't recorded for 30 years, or at least Janice hadn't, and Wanda hadn't recorded any rockabilly for years and hadn't been on tour for maybe close to 30 years. She'd never toured the small clubs. She'd never done a rockabilly tour because the rockabilly part of her life was so short-lived. She recorded a bunch of records, but she really was trying to make it as an opera country star, and she recorded way more country records than she did rockabilly. That was like a really short, couple of years. So it was really exciting to pull them out and to be one of the first women singing that stuff. And so now there's a boatload of young female rockabilly singers out there. So I feel like I started something, and I felt like because I was one of the first women playing guitar that I did inspire a lot of women to start playing, because I've had a lot of women come up to me and tell me that. So I feel like I've done something good, and for music and helping Wanda and helping Janice. I produced Janice's last record before she passed away, and put it on Kickstarter and raised $15,000 to get it out, because she passed away before it could see the light of day, and none of the labels wanted to take a chance on it because she was gone, so she's deceased. And so it's still out there on a record label called Cow Island Music, and I still sell it at my shows too. It's a great record. I'm really proud of it. It's the best thing I ever did, I think.
It's really hard to believe that there wasn't enough record company interest in getting that record out, and you had to resort to going to a crowdfunding campaign to do that. It must have made the end result more satisfying, though.
It made it, to be perfectly honest with you, it was really stressful, because I had, I raised the money, but it wasn't enough. And I had promised everybody, you have to give everybody promises. I promised everybody, a T-shirt and a painting that if you gave $500, you got a painting by me, a portrait of her, and 8x10s. And I promised, a scrapbook of her personal, from her personal scrapbook photographs that I went and scanned, and I had to go fly there and do that, and all the artwork that went with it. It was just so expensive to put it all together, and I wanted to control how the record was going to look and how it was going to sound, and I wanted to spend a good amount of money on the mastering so that it would be the very best it could be. I wanted to leave her legacy with just shining golden stars, and I really wanted it to happen for her when she was alive, was what I really wanted. But it became so important to me after she died to just I felt like I owed it to her, make it as, I wasn't going to take the cheap way out. In other words, just do what you can and try to make it successful, try to get it on in movies or whatever. And it was very stressful for me, actually, because I didn't have the money and I had to try to raise more. And so the Cow Island music guy came in and put another $8,000 into it, and just did a phenomenal job getting it out there. And I wanted pink vinyl, and he went the whole 9 yards with me, and did exactly what I needed and wanted, and my wish came true. And it just it just didn't sell. It just still hasn't sold like it should have, and I think part of it is a lot of people don't even know about it, and it takes a lot of money to market stuff, and I wish I could figure out another way to to bring it back. And one of the ways I'd actually thought about doing was a show that I brought to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, and I put together a slideshow of a lot of the photographs from her book, and I put together a monologue and a story so I could be in a theater and tell her story with a band and play her songs. And so I got to do that at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I never got to take it out on the road, which is what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
I wanted to take it everywhere, and so I could, even, high schools or colleges or, places where I could turn it into the story of Janis Martin, the female Elvis, and just kind of make her, what's the word for it when you're famous after you pass away? I'm drawing a blank on that word.
What, your legacy?
No, there's, I'll think of it in a minute. but when somebody's, finally has a name after they're gone, and I wanted to give her that, but she never really had the fame that Wanda Jackson had, but she was, back in the day in the rockabilly era, she was just as important.
Oh, for sure.
And as Brenda Lee is, and, all those girls from the 50s that could really rock, and they were pioneers, for singers like me that were so inspired by what they did, and she was the female Elvis, and she rocked and she shook and played that guitar and just had the coolest voice, Now, when she was in her 60s, I recorded her. She was 68. Her voice became really mellow and kind of velvety and smoky because she was a smoker, which is, unfortunately what killed her in the end. But it was a beautiful tone, I'll have to say. Her voice had matured into this other sound. And, it's, people can buy it. They can go to my website and they can get it. If anybody's listening and you want to get it and check it out. Or go to cowislandmusic.com and get it. It's pretty cool. Yeah. I will send you one if you'd like. If you want to give it some airplay up in there.
I can promise you that. That would be wonderful. Now,
yeah, it's good.
Your last album, Working Girls Guitar, I believe was the first to feature yourself as the only guitar player on the record. What was the motivation behind that and not bringing in other players? Because you've had some wonderful players on your records in the past.
Well, thank you. Well, I was kind of frustrated about, whenever I would go play live, people would come up to me and they would say, "Wow, you're such a great guitar player. I didn't know you played guitar. We thought you were just a singer and a songwriter." And I would go, "You're kidding. I mean, don't you listen to my records? Don't you read the liner notes? And it says, second guitar solo, Rosie Flores, or first guitar solo, and I played on all my records from even back in my Warner Brothers days. And I just realized that I wasn't getting any press, really, because there were so many other guitar players that it just wasn't a big deal or something. And so I said, well, if I do all the guitar work, then maybe somebody will sit up and take notice.
They'll know it's you, yeah.
Yeah, I ended up on the cover of, my name was on the cover of Guitar Player magazine with Gary Clark Jr. featured and Premier Guitar and Guitar World, and so all of a sudden I started getting notary, and or the word is recognized. Sorry, I'm still in spa mode. I've been sitting in a jacuzzi all day. It feels great though. It's beautiful right now. But I got all this recognition, and I was invited to play at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Chuck Berry, along with the guy from the Isley Brothers and Earl Slick and Dave Alvin and, just all these great players, and Merle Haggard was there. I mean, it's like, okay, all of a sudden people are going to respect me as a player, and it just felt like, okay, thank you, appreciate this, And now I don't really, I don't feel like I have to prove myself because I kind of got the word out there, and I feel like it's gotten recognition. So my next record, I'm sharing the guitar solos with a guy named Kenny Vaughn, who tours with he's kind of best known right now for playing with Marty Stewart. And he's phenomenal. He plays country, he plays blues, he plays bluegrass, he plays a little jazz. He's a really well-rounded, amazing guitar player. And so we did a blues record together, and that's what I'm just finishing mixing right now.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. And who's producing that one?
Well, Charlie Sexton, who's a guitar player that works with Bob Dylan, and he's had many, many hits. And he when he was young, he had some big hits on when MTV was popular. And I think his hit was Beats So Lonely. And but yeah, he's been touring as Bob Dylan's guitarist for the last several years, and he's pretty popular and lives in Austin. He helped me produce the second half of the recording of the record, which was all the overdubs, and helping me pick out the vocals and just everything that we needed to complete it. And then in the early the tracking end of it, it was basically me and Kenny and Dave Rowe, the owner of the studio, that kind of produced those basic tracks together and deciding, tempos. And I basically picked all the songs and arranged them, and then we kind of tweaked it when we were in the studio. And we got some really good basic tracks done last November. And then in September, it took a long time in between, but I finally was able to finish it in September, and we're in mix mode now and hope to have that finished by the end of the first week of November. And then we'll see. I'm thinking about shopping it and seeing what's out there, if it might be a good choice to try and find a blues label for it, because I want to make sure that it gets attention by the blues world, because it's very difficult for me, being known as a country artist or a rockabilly artist, to try and switch gears like that marketing wise, even though if you listen to all my records, I do blues on every single record. I'm
for sure, yeah.
Playing the blues.
Yeah.
So with that, people, she's the rockabilly filly. Well, I'm trying to change my moniker to the San Antonio Switchblade, talking about my guitar playing. And so let's just get rid of the rockabilly word and go somewhere else, But I guess, rockabilly will always be a part of, a love in my heart. And I just feel like I want to be able to be diverse and be appreciated for the different, colors on my palette. And, when I record when I record my jazz record, there will be that then, and so if you look back on the career of Linda Ronstadt and remember how she was able to do a record in Spanish, and then she did a jazz standard record with the Nelson Riddle Orchestra, and then she did her rock and roll, and she did her country, and she's always been such a mentor to me. And so I kind of feel like, I'm sort of following in her footsteps, and, feeling okay about being able to express myself however I want to. I'm an artist. I should be able to express myself. And if you can do something, then just do it. That's my motto.
No, that's an excellent comparison with Linda. She covered all those fields and got widely accepted in all of them.
Yeah.
Just your upcoming plans, apart from the new album obviously coming out soon. What else is on the books?
Well, I'm going to keep working with my Blue Moon Jazz Quartet, and working on the songs for that and getting ready to record. I'm going to be going to Spain in March, Barcelona, and working with a big band around March 8th, and I may be adding some other dates in Europe around that. I'm working on that now. I have an offer to go to Hawaii and perform with a jazz guy in January. I've never played in Hawaii, and so and everything's kind of just rolling along again. So if you keep up with my website, rosieflores.com, all my little up and coming plans will be on there. If anybody wants to check that out, and every date that I play is on there. If you click on tour, it has all the upcoming shows. So that I try to blog a little bit on there, and I'm not very good at it. I need to do it more often. So I'll try to be better. Oh, and I'm working on a book. I'm working on a book
that's right,
that I've been writing for the last 10 years, but it's getting there. I just need some downtime, and I'm hoping that I can try and get it out this year. So the book, the record, and some paintings. I'm trying to finish some paintings to do an art show and do a website of my artwork and the blues record. And I think that's about it. And there's sort of a background plan to do a Christmas play with a Christmas record I wrote with my friend Pat Gallagher. So we'll see what the future brings. As soon as I get everything done, maybe there'll be room for that.
Oh, there's plenty there to look forward to anyway, especially that blues record. We're really looking forward to that. Hey, Rosie, thanks so much for your time. I'll let you go.
Thank
you're always
so much. It's been nice to talk to you.
Yeah, you know how welcome you are down here in Australia, and we look forward to your next visit, whenever that may
be. Thank you so much. I'll try and be more active on pushing myself in that direction. I think I've been lazy about it, so I have to be more diligent and start bugging people.
That sounds good.
If you poke people enough, they'll go, okay, all right then.
Oh, yeah.
Come on over.
Fantastic. All the best, Rosie. Thanks so much.
You too. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.